The bleach bottle in her hand wasn't for cleaning the blood off the floor. It was for making more of it. And the woman in the faded gray uniform standing over 3 unconscious gunmen wasn't just a cleaner. She was a ghost the Chicago underworld thought had died 5 years ago. Before we dive in, we're trying to reach 5,000 subscribers, and every single one matters. Please hit that subscribe button. And I'd love to know, drop a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from. It means everything to know you're out there. For 5 years, the staff of First National Bank thought Doris Estrada was just the quiet cleaning lady who mopped floors and avoided conversation. They thought she was harmless. They thought she was old. They thought she was nobody. They were wrong. When 4 heavily armed men stormed the bank with military precision and 23 hostages, they thought they were the predators. They didn't know they had just walked into the hunting ground of La Víbora, the viper. This is the story of the morning the hunters became the hunted. It was a Monday in October when the morning rush hit First National Bank's main branch in downtown Chicago. The marble lobby echoed with the sharp clack of designer heels against polished stone, the electronic beeping of transaction machines, and the low hum of money changing hands. The air smelled of expensive perfume, fresh coffee, and that particular scent of ambition that clung to everyone who walked through those brass revolving doors. It was 8:47 a.m., the morning shift. Doris Estrada pushed her yellow cleaning cart past the safety deposit box corridor, her reflection invisible in the polished brass fixtures. To the casual observer, to everyone really, Doris was as much a part of the architecture as the marble columns. She was 42, though she appeared closer to 60, with salt and pepper hair pulled back into a severe, practical bun. She wore a faded gray uniform 2 sizes too large, greeting glasses held together with electrical tape, and orthopedic shoes that squeaked faintly against the floor. Her hands were perpetually red and rough from chemicals, and she walked with a slight shuffle, shoulders hunched as if apologizing for occupying space. She spoke in whispered, heavily accented English. She never made eye contact. "She's like furniture, I swear," young teller Melissa Rodriguez said loudly into her phone, not bothering to lower her voice as Doris emptied the trash bin beside her desk. "I literally asked her if she had a good weekend, and she just smiled and nodded, like, does she even speak English?" Melissa didn't pause her conversation, didn't acknowledge Doris's presence beyond the way you might acknowledge a vending machine. Marcus Chen, the bank manager, didn't even glance up from his tablet as he walked past. "Just make sure she doesn't clean the executive offices during client meetings. The last thing we need is her shuffling around while I'm trying to close deals." He said it casually, the way you'd discuss moving a chair out of the way. Marcus was sharp, ambitious, and already planning his next promotion. He had an MBA from Northwestern and a corner office view of Lake Michigan. He didn't notice things about people like Doris. He didn't notice that while she shuffled, her feet never made sound when she wanted them quiet. He didn't notice that when the FedEx delivery driver dropped a package in the lobby 3 floors below, Doris didn't jump. She shifted her weight to the balls of her feet, her eyes cataloging exits before anyone else registered the noise. He didn't notice that beneath her baggy uniform sleeves, her forearms were corded with lean muscle. He didn't notice the scar tissue that ran like a lightning strike from her collarbone down her right shoulder, hidden beneath layers of gray fabric. Doris pushed her cart along the teller stations, her movements slow and deliberate. She hummed softly, an old corrido, a Mexican ballad about outlaws and revolution that her grandmother had sung. To everyone else, she was cleaning. She was actually counting people, counting exits, counting cameras, counting blind spots, counting potential weapons disguised as office supplies. She wasn't bored, she was vigilant. Old habits didn't die, they just went dormant. 5 years ago, Doris Estrada wasn't mopping floors and emptying trash bins. She was La Víbora, the Viper, the most feared enforcer the Estrada crime family had ever produced. She had eliminated threats with improvised weapons in cramped spaces. She had walked into hostile territory alone and walked out with her enemy's blood on her shoes. She had made grown men cross themselves when they heard her name whispered in dark corners of the South Side. She had left that life, or so she told herself. "Hey, cleaning lady," Senior Loan Officer Richard Whitmore snapped, nearly running into her cart as he rushed past, spilling cleaning solution across the marble. "Watch where you're going." He didn't apologize. He didn't even slow down, just kept walking towards his office, phone pressed to his ear, sweat visible on his collar despite the building's perfect climate control. Doris looked up, her face a perfect mask of apologetic confusion. "So sorry, Senor, so sorry." She shuffled forward with paper towels, her movements painfully slow as she cleaned up the spill. But her eyes, hidden beneath those smudged, taped glasses, tracked Richard's retreating figure with the focus of a predator. He'd been nervous for weeks, lost weight, making hushed phone calls in the stairwell. His expensive watch was gone. A man in financial trouble was a dangerous variable. She grabbed the cleaning supplies, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. For just a moment, brief enough that no one watching would have noticed, her forearms flexed, cords of muscle rippling beneath her weathered skin, before she slumped her shoulders again, hiding her strength beneath the costume of weakness. She pushed her cart towards the vault corridor, moving through the morning chaos like a ghost. Outside, dark clouds gathered over Lake Michigan, and the wind picked up, rattling the tall windows. The weather forecast had called for storms. Doris didn't know how right they were. The employees' break room smelled of burnt coffee and microwaved leftovers. Doris sat alone at the corner table farthest from the door, the one beside the humming vending machine that nobody else wanted. It was 9:30 a.m., early for lunch, but that was the point. She always ate now, in the dead zone between breakfast and noon when the room was mostly empty. Her Tupperware container held rice and beans, simple and cheap. She ate slowly, mechanically, her eyes fixed on the food as if it required her complete attention, but her ears were working, always working. The door swung open. Thomas Chen, Marcus's nephew, fresh out of business school with his father's money and his uncle's arrogance, walked in holding a stack of papers and talking to himself, or rather, talking in the room. So the quarterly projections show a 12% increase in commercial lending, which positions us favorably against our competitors in the Chicago market. He paced near the coffee maker, gesturing with his free hand like he was addressing a boardroom. His eyes swept past Doris without seeing her. "We've leveraged our digital infrastructure to capture the millennial demographic." Doris kept eating, slow, steady, invisible. Thomas turned, pointed at her as if she were a mannequin. "Does that sound compelling, the part about leveraging infrastructure?" He didn't wait for an answer. "Yeah, Uncle Marcus is going to love that. Leveraging is a powerful word." The door opened again. Sarah Mitchell, one of the loan officers, entered with two other women from accounting. They grabbed their lunches from the refrigerator, chattering at full volume. "I'm just saying," she lowered her voice to what she probably thought was a whisper but was actually just normal speaking volume, "Richard's been acting weird for weeks, like weirder than usual." "Weird how?" one of the accountants asked. "Stressed, jumpy, and did you see he's not wearing that Rolex anymore? That thing cost like 40 grand. You don't just stop wearing a $40,000 watch." Sarah pulled out a salad, stabbing at it with her fork. "I heard his kid's sick, like really sick, cancer or something." "Oh my God, that's awful." "I know, right? But still, he's been taking these long lunch breaks, and when he comes back, he looks like he's about to throw up. And I saw him in the stairwell last week on his phone, practically yelling at someone about the timeline and "I told you I'd have it." Sarah shook her head. "Money troubles, I'm guessing. Medical bills will destroy you." Doris chewed her rice. She didn't look up, but she filed every word away in the tactical catalog she maintained. Richard Whitmore, financial desperation, sick daughter, erratic behavior, taking calls in the stairwell about timelines. A man in financial desperation was a man who could be leveraged, or who could make very stupid decisions. Thomas finally left, still talking to himself about synergistic partnerships. The women moved their conversation to weekend plans and a new restaurant in River North. Within 10 minutes, the break room emptied again. Doris was alone. She finished her meal, rinsed out her container in the sink, and dried it carefully with paper towels. Then she pushed her cart out into the hallway, back to work, back to watching. The morning shift moved around her like water flowing around a stone. Doris mopped the corridor outside the executive offices, her movements slow and rhythmic, but her eyes tracked everything. Richard Whitmore emerged from his office at 10:15 a.m., earlier than his usual coffee break. His shirt collar was damp with sweat despite the cool air conditioning. He didn't take the elevator, he took the stairs. Doris knew because she heard the stairwell door close with its distinctive metallic click. She pushed her cart toward the stairwell, stopping to clean the water fountain nearby. Through the small window in the stairwell door, she could see Richard 2 flights down, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand running through his hair repeatedly. "I told you, Monday. Yes, Monday morning. The schedule is set. No, she works alone on Mondays. I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock. You promised nobody gets hurt." Doris moved away before he could turn around. She'd heard enough. At 10:47 a.m., she was cleaning the lobby near the main entrance when security guard Jake Morrison approached, coffee in hand. "Morning, Doris," he said, actually making eye contact. "Buenos dias, Senor Jake," she smiled, playing her part. "Hey, you notice that camera up there?" He pointed to the northwest corner of the ceiling. "Been acting up for 3 days now. Keep cutting out. I filed a maintenance request, but you know how long that takes." Doris looked up, squinting through her taped glasses. The camera's red light was dead. Dead zone. Perfect blind spot for anyone who knew it was there. "Is it broken?" she asked in her broken English. "Yeah, I'm gonna have to call the vendor directly if facilities don't get it soon." Jake sipped his coffee. "You stay safe out here, okay? I don't like having dead cameras. Makes me nervous." He should be nervous, Doris thought. As Jake walked away, she glanced through the tall windows facing West Adams Street. There it was again, the black SUV, Cadillac Escalade with tinted windows, parked in the same spot it had occupied for the past week. Today's driver was different from yesterday's. Young, Slavic features, watching the bank entrance. Doris recognized the pattern. She'd run surveillance operations herself. Rotating drivers, same vehicle, watching schedules, learning patterns, counting guards, mapping exits. Someone was planning something, and Richard Whitmore, with his sweating collar and stairwell phone calls, was part of it. 5 years ago, Doris Estrada knew how to read the signs of an impending attack, because she'd been the attack. The memory hit her like a physical blow. The South Side Warehouse District, 2 a.m., the smell of the Chicago River mixing with blood and cordide. The Volkov family wanted the Estrada territory. They wanted the drug routes, the protection rackets, the political connections that came with controlling 3 neighborhoods. They thought they could take it by force. They were wrong. Doris had eliminated 17 of their soldiers in 6 months, fast, precise, deadly. That's why they called her La Víbora, the Viper. She struck before they knew she was there, and by the time they realized, it was too late. A broken bottle in a card game, a fire escape that became a weapon, a car that wouldn't start because she'd cut the brake lines the night before. Bodies in dumpsters, buildings burned. The war was brutal, and Doris was the Estrada's nuclear option. Until the Volkovs went after their families. Miguel, 7 years old, her nephew, her brother Eduardo's son. They'd put a bomb under Eduardo's car. By luck, by God, by chance, by something, Miguel hadn't been in the vehicle when it detonated, but the message was clear. No one was safe. Doris made a choice that night. She faked her death in a warehouse explosion, left enough of a burned body procured from a morgue contact to make it believable, and vanished. The Estrada family held a funeral. Eduardo wept over a closed casket, and Doris Estrada became a ghost. Without La Víbora eliminating their leadership, the Volkov family collapsed within a year. The Estradas won, and Miguel grew up safe in Arizona, believing his aunt had died a hero. The scar across Doris's ribs, hidden now beneath her gray uniform, was a bullet graze from that staged death. She'd shot herself, shallow enough to survive, but deep enough to leave blood at the scene. The pain was excruciating, necessary. She had $50,000 in cash, split between 3 locations in Chicago, a fake passport in a safety deposit box under a different name, 3 burner phones in her apartment, emergency protocol, just in case, and one rule she'd made herself, the rule that let her sleep at night: never kill again unless there's no other choice. For 5 years, she'd kept that rule, 5 years of mopping floors and being invisible and pretending the monster inside her was dead. But as Doris looked at the black SUV across the street, at the dead camera in the corner, at Richard Whitmore's sweating desperation, she felt the old instincts stirring. Something was coming, and she was going to be ready. 10:48 a.m. Doris was cleaning the vault corridor when the smell hit her. Gunwale and cheap cologne, an incongruous combination in a place that reeked of money and air freshener. The scent triggered something primal in her nervous system, a warning bell that bypassed conscious thought and went straight to survival instinct. Her body reacted before her mind could process why. Muscles tensed, breathing slowed, her pupils dilated slightly, sharpening her peripheral vision. The shuffle in her step vanished for a fraction of a second before she caught herself, forced her shoulders back into their hunched position. But her senses were wide open now, receiving data at a speed she hadn't allowed in 5 years. She recognized that smell. She'd lived with it for 15 years, the particular combination of Hop's No. 9 gun cleaning solvent and the kind of discount cologne men wore when they wanted to seem professional but couldn't afford the real thing. It was the smell of soldiers, mercenaries, men who carried weapons for a living. Doris turned slowly, still gripping her mop handle, still playing the part. Through the corridor entrance, she could see the main lobby. 4 men were walking through the brass revolving doors. Business casual, slacks, button-down shirts, light jackets suitable for October weather. To anyone else, they looked like clients, maybe businessmen here for a loan consultation or to access their safety deposit boxes. But Doris saw what others didn't. She saw the way they moved, not the casual stroll of customers, but the practiced coordination of a tactical entry. She saw the weight distribution in their jackets, heavier on one side where concealed weapons pulled the fabric. She saw the hand signals, subtle, professional, as they fanned out into a diamond formation that covered angles and exits. And then she heard it. Click-clack, 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 click-clack. 4 sounds, 4 safeties being switched off on military-grade weapons. 4 shooters. Doris's grip tightened on the mop handle. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to move, to act, to neutralize the threat. But she stayed frozen, watching, waiting, because the moment she moved, the moment she revealed what she was, people would die. So she stayed still, stayed invisible, and watched the predators enter her territory. Everything happened fast, but Doris saw it in slow motion. The leaders stepped forward, 6'2", barrel-chested, broad shoulders that strained against his jacket, Slavic features, high cheekbones, a heavy brow, cold blue eyes that swept the room with the calculated assessment of a man who'd done this before. His age was hard to pin down, somewhere between 35 and 45, with the kind of weathered face that came from hard living. He raised his weapon, an AR-15 with a 30-round magazine, matte black finish, professional grade, and fired a single shot into the ceiling. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Acoustic tiles exploded, dust and debris rained down on the marble floor. The electronic beeping of the transaction machines seemed to stutter and stop. For one heartbeat, there was perfect silence. Then the screaming started. "Everybody down, now!" The leader's voice cut through the panic like a blade. Heavy accent. Russian, Doris's brain cataloged automatically. Former military by the way he held the weapon. Textbook stance, finger discipline, controlled breathing. The other 3 gunmen spread out with practiced efficiency. 2 more AR-15s appeared along with 2 Glock 19s with extended magazines. They weren't amateurs. They moved like a unit that had trained together, each covering a sector, overlapping fields of fire. Gunman number 2, stocky build, nervous energy evident in the way he shifted his weight from foot to foot, dark hair cropped close to his skull, moved to the left, his AR-15 trained on the teller stations. Gunman number 3, tall, thin, a vicious scar running down his left cheek from eye to jawline, took position near the entrance, blocking the exit. Gunman number 4, the youngest, maybe mid-20s, with Cyrillic tattoos visible on his knuckles, moved to the right, his Glock 19 sweeping across the customer seating area. Hands where I can see them, get in the center, move. The leader's commands were clipped, efficient. The lobby erupted into chaos. Customers and employees scrambled toward the center of the floor, some crawling, some running, all screaming. Doris watched from the vault corridor, still frozen, as the hostages clustered together like frightened sheep. She counted them automatically. 23. Melissa Rodriguez, the young teller who'd mocked Doris an hour ago, was 8 months pregnant and sobbing uncontrollably. An elderly couple, Harold and Ruth Morrison, she recognized them as Jake's parents, here for their monthly mortgage payment, clung to each other, Harold's face the color of old paper. Shannon Davis, a young mother in her 30s, wrapped her arms around her 6-year-old daughter Emma, covering the child's eyes. Marcus Chen was on his knees, hands raised, his expression of shock and disbelief. Thomas Chen was beside him, shaking. Sarah Mitchell was crying, mascara running down her face. And Richard Whitmore. Richard looked like he was going to vomit. But more than that, he didn't look surprised. He looked terrified, yes, but not shocked. This was what he'd been expecting, what he'd been part of. Jake Morrison, the security guard, reached for his service weapon. "Don't," Doris wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The stocky gunman, Dimitri, she'd learn later, spun and fired. The shot caught Jake in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard, blood spreading across his uniform shirt. Not fatal, Doris assessed immediately. Missed the subclavian artery. He'd survive if he got treatment soon. "Anyone else want to be a hero?" Dimitri's voice was high-pitched, strained. He was scared, Doris realized. Scared men with guns were the most dangerous kind. The hostages pressed themselves flat against the marble floor. Emma was crying. Melissa was hyperventilating. Harold clutched his chest. Potential cardiac event, Doris noted. Multiple variables. High risk of civilian casualties. And Doris was still in the vault corridor, unnoticed. The leader's eyes swept the room one final time, checking sectors, confirming control. His gaze passed over the vault corridor where Doris stood with her mop and cart. For a moment, their eyes met. Victor Kozlov, though Doris didn't know his name yet, saw exactly what he expected to see, an old cleaning woman, frightened, harmless, irrelevant. His eyes moved on without pause. "You," he gestured with the barrel of his AR-15. "Old woman, get out here with the others." Doris let her mouth fall open. She let her hands shake on the mop handle, controlled tremors that looked like terror, but were actually her body preparing for combat. She shuffled forward, every movement exaggerating her age, her weakness, her complete and total harmlessness. "Por favor, no dispares, por favor," she whimpered in Spanish, stumbling slightly as she pushed her cart ahead of her. "Please don't shoot, please." "Move faster," the young one, Pavel, barked. Doris shuffled faster, but not much. She was crying now, or appearing to cry, her face crumpled behind her taped glasses. She pushed her yellow cleaning cart across the lobby, parking it near the teller stations. Not random, exactly where she needed it. Between the gunmen and the vault. Mobile cover. Arsenal. She lowered herself to the floor with the others, moving like every joint hurt, like she was fragile. She sat with her head down, glasses askew, her shoulders trembling. But her eyes were moving, counting angles, calculating distances, memorizing positions. Leader, 12 feet away, northeast position, covering the vault and the front entrance. AR-15, likely 30 rounds. The sidearm visible on his right hip looked like a Makarov, Russian standard. Dmitri, 15 feet, northwest position. AR-15, nervous, dangerous because of it. Alexei, 20 feet, directly at the entrance. Glock 19, scar tissue on his face suggested prior combat experience. Calm, professional. Pavel, 10 feet, southeast position. Glock 19, Cyrillic tattoos on his knuckles. She could just make out the letters. Volkov family symbols. Doris's blood ran cold. Volkov. After 5 years, they'd found a way back into her world. But they didn't know it yet. She sat among the hostages, invisible and broken, while La Víbora woke up inside her like a snake uncoiling in the sun.
Doris sat on the cold marble floor, her head bowed, her body trembling in what appeared to be terror. Around her, the other hostages were crying, praying, hyperventilating. Emma Davis sobbed into her mother's chest. Harold Morrison's breathing was ragged and shallow, early signs of a cardiac event. Melissa Rodriguez rocked back and forth, one hand on her swollen belly, whispering, "Please, please, please," like a mantra. But beneath Doris's performance of fear, her mind was working with the cold precision of a machine designed for violence. She watched Victor through her askew glasses as he moved through the lobby, barking orders. His Russian accent was heavy, but his English was fluent, years of immersion, not just classroom learning. The way he held the AR-15 revealed formal training, three-point stance, weapon tight to his shoulder, muzzle discipline even when gesturing. But there were tells. His transitions between targets were textbook, literally like he was following a manual. Russian army, she assessed. Standard infantry, probably conscript service, maybe some contract work after. Not Spetsnaz, not elite. Competent, but not exceptional. The weapons confirmed it. AR-15s and Glocks. Expensive, yes, but stock configuration. No custom grips, no upgraded triggers, no personal modifications that came from years of professional use. These were bought, not earned. Probably purchased in the last few months specifically for this job. Their formation was another tell. Diamond pattern, overlapping fields of fire, one on the exit, straight out of a tactical manual. But it was rigid. They held their positions like they'd practiced it in an empty room, not like men who'd worked together in actual combat. They hadn't worked as a team for long. Weeks, maybe, not years. Dmitri kept checking his watch. Every 45 seconds, his eyes flicked to his wrist. Timetable pressure. They were on a schedule, which meant this wasn't just a robbery, it was a coordinated operation with external moving parts. Probably a getaway vehicle with a narrow extraction window. Alexei, the tall one with the scar, had his finger on the trigger guard when he should have had it indexed along the frame. Sloppy. Dangerous. A nervous twitch, a startled movement, and that Glock would discharge. He kept licking his lips, scanning the hostages like he expected one of them to rush him. Fear masked as aggression, the most dangerous kind. Pavel, the youngest, kept glancing at Richard Whitmore. Not just glancing, checking, making sure Richard was still there, still compliant. Confirmation of what Doris already suspected. Richard was the inside man. Pavel was watching him the way you'd watch a nervous asset and might break under pressure. But the fatal mistake, the one that made Doris's pulse quicken with something that wasn't quite hope, but was close, was their positioning. They'd sealed the front entrance, they'd established control of the lobby, they'd herded the hostages into a kill zone with overlapping fire, but they had no rear security. They hadn't cleared the back offices, they hadn't checked the supply closets, they hadn't posted anyone in the vault corridor or the executive suite on the second floor. They'd seized the visible space and assumed that was enough. It was a mistake La Víbora would never have made. It was a mistake that would kill them. Doris Estrada, though that wasn't the name she was born with, and it wasn't the name the Chicago underworld knew her by, killed her first man at 19. The memory flashed unbidden. A warehouse in Pilsen, the smell of machine oil and river water, a Sinaloa cartel lieutenant named Ortega who thought he could move product through Estrada territory without paying tribute. He'd been 38, 6 feet tall, armed with a .45 and the confidence of a man who'd never been challenged by a teenage girl. She'd used a tire iron. It had taken 11 seconds from the moment she stepped into his line of sight to the moment he stopped breathing. 11 seconds that changed everything. Her uncle Hector, the Estrada family patriarch, had looked at her differently after that. Not with affection, never with affection, but with respect and fear. The kills that followed came easier. A rival enforcer in a parking garage, a corrupt cop who was selling information to the Volkovs, a man from New York who thought he could muscle into Chicago. 23 confirmed kills over 15 years. 23 souls that she'd sent into the dark with improvised weapons, careful planning, and the kind of cold-blooded efficiency that earned her a reputation that stretched from the South Side to the outfit's old stomping grounds in the Loop. La Víbora, the Viper. They'd called her that because her strikes were fast, precise, and deadly, because she could hide in plain sight until the moment she attacked, because by the time you realized she was dangerous, you were already dead. Men twice her age had stepped aside when she walked into rooms. Made men with decades of violence under their belts had looked at her with the kind of fear usually reserved for natural disasters. And now she sat on a marble floor in a gray uniform, playing the frightened old woman while her brain conducted the same tactical assessment that had kept her alive through a gang war. Target assessment. 4 hostiles, military trained, adequate armament, standard infantry skill level, poor team cohesion, timetable pressure indicates external coordination. Civilian casualties, 23 non-combatants, 1 wounded, survivable with treatment within 30 minutes, high-risk individuals, pregnant female, potential premature labor from stress, elderly male, cardiac event, child age 6, trauma risk, multiple others with various physical limitations. Environmental advantages, intimate knowledge of terrain, 5 years of daily mapping, every exit, every blind spot, every structural weakness cataloged, multiple improvised weapons available. The enemy assumes 0 threat from my position. Probability of successful engagement, 87%. Probability of 0 civilian casualties, 34%. Unacceptable. The Estrada family code, the rules that had governed her life from age 15 to age 37, echoed in her mind. Protect the family, punish the betrayers, never leave evidence. But she wasn't in the Estrada family anymore. These people weren't her family. She'd left that world behind. Except the world had followed her here. And now she had to make a choice, stay invisible and let whatever was going to happen, or become La Víbora one more time and try to save 23 people who'd never seen her human. Doris's eyes moved to her cleaning cart, parked 10 feet away near the teller stations. To Victor and his men, it was exactly what it appeared to be, a janitor's cart. Yellow plastic, mops, spray bottles, the mundane tools of invisible labor. To La Víbora, it was an armory. The industrial bleach in the large white bottle, sodium hypochlorite, high concentration, contact with ammonia in the blue bottle would create chloramine gas, temporary respiratory distress, eye irritation, disorientation, a chemical weapon that would incapacitate without killing. The drain cleaner in the small black bottle, sulfuric acid 93%, contact with skin would cause second-degree burns in seconds, contact with eyes would cause permanent blindness. The glass cleaner, if sprayed directly in the eyes, temporary blindness for 20 to 30 minutes, long enough. The mop handle, hardwood, 4 feet long, 2 inches in diameter, a staff weapon, could be broken diagonally to create a stake with a sharp point. The metal bucket, 12 pounds when empty, 20 when filled with water, blunt force weapon, could also be used to create acoustic distractions, measure echo patterns in corridors. The lemon-scented disinfectant, 70% ethanol base, extremely flammable, splash radius of 6 feet if ignited. The utility knife in the side pocket of the cart, 4-inch retractable blade, edged weapon for close quarters work. The maintenance keys on her belt, access to every locked room in the building, the server room, the executive offices, the supply closets, the vault corridor's security panel.
the first aid kit clipped to the cart's side for Jake Morrison and anyone else who got hurt when this went sideways. But the cart was just the immediate cache. Doris's eyes cataloged the rest of the lobby like she was reading a menu. Letter openers on every desk, 6 visible from her position, 6 small blades. Heavy tape dispensers, weighted bases, could be thrown or used for blunt force. Phone cords, 8 visible. Garrotas, restraints. Hot coffee in the break room. She'd seen 3 full pots when she'd eaten lunch. Scalding water was a weapon if you knew how to deploy it. Fire extinguishers, 1 visible near the vault corridor entrance, another near the front door. Blunt weapons, vision obscurers if discharged at face level. The decorative marble pen holder on Marcus Chen's desk, solid stone, 5 pounds, perfect throwing weight. The environment was rich with weapons for someone who knew how to see them. 23 confirmed kills, 15 years of close quarters combat, a lifetime of turning the mundane into the lethal. The odds were still 34% for 0 civilian casualties, but La Víbora had won fights with worse odds. Doris kept her head down, kept her body trembling, kept playing the frightened old woman, but inside, the Viper was awake, and she was hungry.
Victor stepped forward, his AR-15 held at a ready position, his cold blue eyes scanning the terrified hostages. When he spoke, his voice carried the kind of absolute authority that came from years of commanding men in violent situations. Listen carefully. We're here for the vault. You cooperate, nobody else gets hurt. Resist, and you all die. Simple. He let the words hang in the air for a moment, then pointed the barrel of his weapon at Richard Whitmore. You, banker, stand up. Richard's face drained of what little color remained. His hands shook as he slowly got to his feet, his legs visibly unsteady. Marcus Chen stared at him with an expression of betrayal that would have been heartbreaking if the situation weren't so deadly. Open the vault, Victor ordered. You have the access code. Use it. I can do that. Dmitri moved to Richard's side, his AR-15 pointed at the loan officer's spine. No tricks, banker boy. Straight to the vault. Fast. As Richard stumbled toward the vault corridor, flanked by Dmitri and Victor, the attention of all 4 gunmen shifted. This was the critical moment, the objective they'd come for. Even Alexei at the door turned slightly to watch, and Pavel. Doris made her move. She shifted her weight as if trying to stand, and her elbow accidentally caught the edge of her cleaning cart. The yellow plastic cart tipped, spilling supplies across the marble floor with a clatter that made several hostages flinch. Spray bottles rolled, the mop handle clattered, the metal bucket rang like a bell as it bounced. Victor's head snapped around. What the... So sorry, Doris wailed, her voice high-pitched and panicked. She scrambled on her hands and knees, reaching for the scattered supplies. Mis manos viejas, I'm so sorry, señor, so sorry. Clean that up, Victor snapped, his attention already returning to Richard and the vault. Jesus Christ. See, I clean. Doris gathered the spray bottles, moving in her shuffle crawl across the floor. But she wasn't just cleaning up, she was repositioning, moving freely while every eye was on Richard Whitmore's shaking hands as he approached the vault's keypad. Pavel glanced at her as she shuffled past, moving toward the break room with her arms full of supplies. Hurry up, abuela. Grandmother. Dismissive. Contemptuous. Doris kept her head down, kept shuffling. Sí, señor, muy rápido. He turned his back to her, watching Victor and Richard at the vault entrance 30 feet away. Richard was entering the code, his fingers fumbling on the keypad. Doris was 10 feet behind Pavel now, 8 feet, 6 feet. The shuffle vanished. Her posture straightened, her breathing shifted, slower, controlled, the kind of breath control that came from years of close-quarters combat. Her grip on the spray bottle changed from fumbling to precise. 3 steps, silent. Her orthopedic shoes made no sound on the marble because she was walking on the balls of her feet now, weight distributed perfectly, each footfall deliberate. Pavel started to turn, some instinct finally warning him. Too late. Doris's left hand clamped over Pavel's mouth from behind, her fingers digging into the pressure points at his jaw that would paralyze his ability to scream. Her right hand came up with the spray bottle, and she discharged the entire contents directly into his eyes at point-blank range. The chemical mixture, chloramine gas in liquid suspension, hit his corneas and burned like acid. Pavel's body convulsed, trying to scream, but Doris's grip was iron. She drove her knee into his lower back, right at the kidney, dropping him to his knees while controlling his gun arm with her body weight. The AR-15 was slung across his chest. She pressed it against his body with her torso, trapping it, preventing it from swinging free or firing. Pavel clawed at his burning eyes with his free hand, trying to breathe through an airway that was closing from chemical exposure. His body bucked, panicking, drowning in open air. Doris held him, counting seconds. She could feel his pulse hammering against her palm, could feel the moment his struggles began to weaken as oxygen deprivation took hold. 10 seconds, 15, 20. She dragged him backwards, still covering his mouth, still controlling his weapon. The break room door was 3 feet away. She kicked it open with her foot, pulled him inside, lowered him to the floor. 30 seconds from initial contact, 15 seconds to disable and secure and hide the body. 45 seconds total. Completely silent. Doris stood in the break room, her back against the door, and took a deep breath. Her heart rate was elevated but controlled, 120 beats per minute, well within operational parameters. Her hands were steady when she held them up to examine them in the fluorescent light. No tremors, no hesitation. The old skills hadn't faded. She was La Víbora again, and God help her, it felt like coming home. For 5 years, she'd convinced herself that person was dead, that the woman who'd killed 23 men with improvised weapons and cold calculation had been left behind in that warehouse explosion, that Doris Estrada, the cleaning lady, was her true self, and La Víbora was just a nightmare she'd finally woken from. But the truth was undeniable now, written in the unconscious man on the break room floor and the chemical weapon in her hand. Violence was her first language, and she spoke it fluently, perfectly, effortlessly. She hated that it felt good, hated the surge of satisfaction that came with a clean takedown, hated how alive she felt, how sharp, how clear. But Miguel's face flashed in her mind, 7 years old, laughing, safe in Arizona because she'd made the choice to disappear. Then Emma Davis, 6 years old, crying, terrified in the lobby with a gun pointed at her mother. Then Melissa Rodriguez, 8 months pregnant, hyperventilating on the marble floor. Then Harold Morrison, clutching his chest, on the edge of cardiac arrest. This is what she did. This is what she was good at, the monster that hunted other monsters. She'd hate herself later. She'd scrub her hands until they bled and pray for forgiveness she didn't deserve. Right now, she had work to do. 3 more targets, 1 wounded hostage who needed medical attention within, she checked her watch, 23 minutes now. 23 civilians who needed to walk out of this bank alive. Something crackled at her hip. Pavel's radio. She'd clipped it to her belt during the takedown, muscle memory from operations 15 years ago. Pavel, status? Victor's voice, distorted by static but clear enough. Pavel, you copy? Silence. Doris didn't respond. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Dmitri, where the hell is Pavel? I don't know, maybe a bathroom? Check on him, now. Doris smiled, a cold expression that would have terrified anyone who saw it, but no one was watching. She was still invisible. She opened the break room door, slipped back into the lobby. The invisible war had begun, and La Víbora was winning. The vault door swung open with a heavy mechanical groan, revealing rows of safety deposit boxes and stacks of cash in organized bundles. Richard Whitmore stood beside the keypad, his shirt soaked through with sweat, his hands still shaking from entering the access code. Inside, now, Victor gestured with his AR-15, and Richard stumbled into the vault like a man walking to his execution. Victor and Dmitri followed, their boots heavy on the reinforced floor. In the lobby, Alexei remained with the hostages, his Glock sweeping across them in slow arcs. His scar tissue pulled tight as he smiled, a cruel expression that made Emma Davis bury her face deeper into her mother's chest. "You look like you're going to pass out, banker boy," Alexei called toward the vault, his Russian accent thick with mockery. "Relax, you'll get your cut, assuming you don't die of a heart attack first." The words hit the hostages like a physical blow. Richard was part of this. Their trusted senior loan officer had betrayed them. Marcus Chen's face contorted with disbelief and rage. "Richard," he said, his voice hoarse, How could you? Inside the vault, Victor and Dmitri moved efficiently, pulling duffel bags from their jackets and filling them with banded cash and bearer bonds. Victor keyed his radio, his eyes scanning the vault's contents with professional assessment. "Pavel, bring the van to the back entrance. 3 minutes." He paused. Static hissed. "Pavel?" Nothing. Victor's jaw tightened. "Victor, respond." Dmitri looked up from stuffing hundreds into a bag. "Maybe the radio's dead." His radio was new, checked it this morning. Victor's eyes narrowed. "Dmitri, where the hell is Pavel?" "Last I saw, he was watching the hostages." "Find him. Now." Alexei stood over the hostages, his attention divided between the terrified civilians at his feet and the radio conversation crackling in his ear. Doris had returned to her position among the hostages, but she'd moved, incrementally, carefully, using the confusion of Richard's betrayal and the vault activity to shuffle closer to Alexei's position. She was 15 feet away now, close enough. Her metal bucket sat 5 feet to her left, where she'd forgotten it while cleaning up her accidentally spilled supplies. Dirty water still sloshed in the bottom, 12 pounds of liquid weight in a heavy steel container. Alexei keyed his radio. "Pavel's not responding. You want me to check?" Victor's voice crackled back, tension evident. "Stay with the hostages. I'll find him." But Victor was emerging from the vault with 2 heavy duffel bags pulling at his shoulders. He wasn't moving fast. He was moving like a man carrying 60 pounds of cash, scanning for threats, his AR-15 held one-handed. This was Doris's window. She stood slowly, her movements still hunched, still playing the terrified old woman. Her hands were raised, trembling. "Perdón, señor," she said, her voice wavering. My bucket, I need to." Alexei's Glock snapped toward her. "Sit down." Doris dropped to her knees, but she was next to the bucket now, her fingers wrapped around the handle. So sorry, I said sit." Doris exploded upward. The transformation was instantaneous. The hunched shoulders straightened, the shuffle vanished, the terrified old woman disappeared, replaced by a predator moving with liquid violence. She swung the bucket with every ounce of strength in her compact frame, her hips rotating, her core engaged, putting 42 years of body mechanics behind 12 pounds of metal and water. The bucket connected with the barrel of Alexei's Glock, just as his finger tightened on the trigger. Bang! The shot went wild, the barrel forced up and to the side by the impact of the blow. The bullet punched through acoustic tiles, sending debris raining down. The hostages screamed. Alexei stumbled backward, his weapon torn from his grip by the force of the blow. But Doris didn't stop. She was inside his reach now, too close for him to recover, too fast for him to react. She drove the bucket's edge into his throat, the sharp metal rim with surgical precision. His windpipe crushed. He gagged, both hands flying to his neck, trying to breathe through a collapsed airway. His eyes went wide with panic and shock. Doris followed him as he stumbled backward. She reversed the bucket, swung it like a sledgehammer, and brought the bottom down across his temple with a sound like a mallet hitting meat.
Alexei's eyes rolled back, his legs gave out. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings, his body hitting the marble floor with a heavy thud that echoed through the suddenly silent lobby. The hostages stared in frozen shock. Emma Davis had stopped crying. Harold Morrison had stopped clutching his chest. Even Melissa Rodriguez had stopped hyperventilating. They were staring at Doris, or at what Doris had become. She stood over Alexei's unconscious body, bucket still in her hands, her posture straight, her breathing controlled. The taped glasses were askew, but somehow still on her face. Her gray uniform was rumpled, but everything else, her stance, her eyes, her energy, was different. Victor and Dmitri spun toward the commotion, dropping their duffel bags, weapons rising. Viktor Kozlov's AR-15 was trained on the cleaning woman before his conscious mind even processed what he was seeing. 20 years of survival instinct kicked in, threat assessment, target acquisition, trigger finger sliding from guard to trigger. But then he saw her face, really saw her. The hunched shoulders were back, the posture was straight, military bearing, weight balanced on the balls of his feet, ready to move in any direction. The shuffling, arthritic movement was gone, replaced by controlled stillness that spoke of absolute confidence. And her eyes, those eyes. Victor's blood turned to ice water, his finger froze on the trigger, his breathing stopped. He knew those eyes. 20 years ago, he was 17, a teenage runner for the Volkov family, ferrying messages and packages between made men who terrified him. He'd been in a South Side warehouse when a woman walked in alone, small, unassuming, brown hair, simple clothes, nothing remarkable. 3 made men had been playing cards at a table. One of them, Dmitri Volkov, a lieutenant, his uncle, had laughed at her. "You lost, little girl?" She'd smiled, then she'd picked up a broken beer bottle from the floor. 11 seconds later, all 3 men were dead. Dmitri with the bottle buried in his carotid, Anton with his own knife in his eye socket, Sergei with a deck of cards shoved so far down his throat he'd asphyxiated. She'd walked out the same way she'd walked in, calm, unhurried, unbothered. But she'd looked at Victor, huddled in the corner, and spoken one sentence. "Tell your family La Víbora says hello." He'd never forgotten those eyes. And now, those same eyes were staring at him across a bank lobby in Chicago 20 years later. "La Víbora," Victor whispered, his voice shaking. "You're dead. I saw your body, the warehouse fire. You're dead." Doris smiled, a terrible, cold expression that held no warmth, no mercy, no humanity. When she spoke, her voice was clear and perfect, the heavy Mexican accent completely gone, replaced by the flat, neutral tones of someone who could become anyone. "Reports of my death," she said, "were greatly exaggerated." She dropped the bucket. It hit the marble floor with a clang that made Dmitri flinch. "Hello, Victor," she smiled, a terrible, cold expression that held no warmth, no mercy, no humanity. "You grew up, still running errands for the Volkov family, still fetching coffee for men braver than you? You," Victor's hands were shaking on his weapon, "you're supposed to be dead." "So are you," Doris said. "I let you live that night. I wonder if that was a mistake." Behind Victor, Richard Whitmore had collapsed against the vault door, sobbing. Marcus Chen was staring at him, at Doris, at the unconscious gunman, his face a mask of incomprehension. Richard choked in between sobs. "My daughter, Maya, stage 4 lymphoma. The bank denied my loan. The experimental treatment costs $400,000. I didn't know what else to do." "So you brought armed men into my bank?" Marcus' voice was strangled. "You put pregnant women and children in danger for money?" "For my daughter," Richard screamed. "They said she'd die without it. What would you do?" But no one was listening to Richard anymore. Every eye in the lobby was on the cleaning woman and the gunman, locked in a standoff that carried 20 years of history. "Drop the weapon, Victor," Doris said quietly. "Drop it and maybe you walk out of here." Victor's finger tightened on the trigger. "You're old, Doris, slow, and there's still 2 of us." 3 of you, Doris corrected. Pavel is in the break room, alive but won't be joining you. Alexei's going to have a headache for a week. That leaves you and Dmitri. And Dmitri, her eyes flicked to the stocky man behind Victor. Dmitri's hands are shaking. He's never killed anyone, has he? Dmitri's face went pale. How did you... Victor started. Because I've been doing this before you had facial hair, little Victor, and you've made 3 mistakes today. Want to know what they are? Stay back, Dmitri shouted, his AR-15 wavering. Doris stopped. Her smile never changed. Mistake 1, you didn't clear the building. Mistake 2, you underestimated the help. And mistake 3? She spread her arms, encompassing the lobby, the vault, the hostages.
The standoff lasted exactly 2 seconds before Dmitri's nerve broke. Fuck this. He opened fire. Doris moved. She grabbed Marcus Chen by his collar and threw him behind the teller counter with strength that shouldn't have existed in a woman her size. Bullets chewed through marble, sending chips of stone flying like shrapnel. The decorative columns exploded, glass partitions shattered, the electronic displays sparked and died. Run, Doris screamed at the hostages. Get to the walls, move. The lobby erupted into chaos. Hostages scattered in every direction, screaming. Shannon Davis dragged Emma toward the loan officer cubicles. Harold and Ruth Morrison crawled behind desks. Melissa Rodriguez stumbled toward the vault corridor, her hands protecting her pregnant belly. Victor was shouting into the madness, "Get her, kill her, don't let her..." But his commands were lost in the confusion. Half the hostages were running, creating a moving screen of civilians between Doris and the gunmen. Dmitri couldn't shoot without hitting innocents. Victor couldn't get a clear angle. Doris wasn't the cleaning lady anymore. She was a wolf that had been playing sheep, and the other wolves had just realized they'd made a fatal error. She stayed low, moving fast, using the panicking hostages as cover. Her body moved with economy and precision, no wasted motion, every step calculated. She reached her cleaning cart where she'd positioned it hours ago. Her hand found the drain cleaner bottle, black plastic, heavy, sulfuric acid, 93% concentration. Dmitri was advancing through the chaos, his AR-15 up, firing controlled 3-round bursts. Disciplined, trained, but his attention was divided between Doris and the fleeing civilians, and that split focus was going to kill him. Doris grabbed the cleaning cart with both hands and shoved. The yellow plastic cart was heavy, 60 pounds loaded with supplies and equipment. It rolled across the slick marble, gaining momentum, wheels rattling. Dmitri saw it coming and fired. Bullets punched through the plastic, sending spray bottles exploding. But physics didn't care about bullets. The cart kept rolling, accelerating. It crashed into Dmitri's legs at shin height. He went down hard, stumbling forward, his weapon pointing up. Doris was already moving, closing the 8-foot gap while he was off balance, while his brain was still processing the impact. She had the acid bottle uncapped. Doris drove Dmitri backward into the vault corridor, away from the civilians, into the narrow, confined space where his size and reach became disadvantages. The corridor was 12 feet wide, metal walls reinforced with security panels, fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows. Close quarters, her territory. Dmitri recovered faster than she expected. He was trained, competent. He swung the AR-15 like a club, the stock arcing toward her head with enough force to crush her skull. Doris ducked under it, feeling the wind of the weapon's passage over her hair. She came up inside his reach, with the acid bottle in her right hand. She sprayed. The sulfuric acid hit him across the face and chest in a chemical arc. For one frozen moment, nothing happened. Then the acid met moisture, sweat, saliva, the natural oils of skin, and began to react.
Dmitri screamed, a horrible animal sound of agony that echoed off the metal walls. The acid burned through his shirt like paper, searing into his chest. His face blistered, the skin turning red and then white as the chemical destroyed tissue at the molecular level. He dropped the AR-15, both hands clawing at his face, trying to wipe away the acid, but only spreading it further. He stumbled backward, blind, screaming, his body going into shock. Doris stepped past him without a second glance. He was neutralized, alive, but out of the fight. She'd deal with his injuries after, if there was an after. Victor was behind her, entering the corridor, his weapon up. Bullets sparked off the metal walls. Doris dove left through the doorway into the safety deposit box room. Ricochets whined past her ear. She hit the floor rolling, came up behind the first row of metal boxes. The safety deposit box room was a maze, 12 rows of metal boxes from floor to ceiling, narrow aisles between them, low ceiling with exposed ventilation ducts, one entrance, no windows, limited visibility, claustrophobic. Perfect. Victor entered, moving tactically, his AR-15 sweeping corners. "You think you can hide from me, Doris?" His voice was steady, controlled. The scared teenager was gone, replaced by the professional soldier. "You're old, you're slow, and there's still 2 of us left." Doris's voice came from somewhere in the metal maze, echoing, impossible to pinpoint. "Actually, there's 4 of you left. Pavel's sleeping, Alexei won't wake up for a while, Dmitri's going to need a hospital. That leaves you." She moved silently through the aisles, her orthopedic shoes making no sound. 5 years of cleaning this room every Monday. She knew every blind spot, every acoustic dead zone, every shadow the fluorescent lights created. "But you're right about one thing," her voice continued, coming from a different direction now. "I am old, and I'm tired of cleaning up messes." Victor moved through the aisles, weapon up, trained and careful. He'd served in Chechnya, street fighting, urban warfare, hunting insurgents through bombed-out buildings. He knew how to clear rooms, knew how to track enemies through confined spaces. But he'd never hunted La Víbora. "You want to know why I let you live that night, Victor, when I killed Dmitri, Anton, and Sergei?" Victor spun toward the sound, fired a burst. The bullets hit empty middle boxes. The noise was deafening in the enclosed space. "You were just a kid," her voice came from behind him now. He spun again, weapon tracking. "But you're not a kid anymore." Her voice shifted again, moving through the metal maze like a ghost. "You grew up, joined the Volkov family properly, came back to Chicago thinking you'd finish what your uncle started." "Shut up," he fired again, panic starting to edge into his voice. "Show yourself." "You know what you did wrong today, Victor?" Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "You underestimated the help. You thought the woman with the mop couldn't hurt you. You thought invisible meant powerless." Victor backed against a row of boxes, his breathing harsh, his eyes darting. He was losing his tactical composure, burning ammunition, letting fear guide him instead of training. "That's the thing about being invisible," Doris said. "People don't see you coming." She dropped from above. She'd climbed the shelving unit, using the metal boxes as handholds, positioning herself directly over his last known location. She landed on his back, driving him forward and down, using her body weight and momentum to take him to the ground. They hit hard. Victor's weapon clattered away. He bucked, trying to throw her off, reaching for the Makarov on his hip. But Doris was faster. She'd palmed a letter opener during the chaos in the lobby. She'd grabbed it off a desk while diving for cover. Old habits, always grabbing improvised weapons. The letter opener was 5 inches of sharpened steel with a marble handle, not designed as a weapon, but in the right hands, anything was a weapon. Doris drove the letter opener through Victor's right hand, between the metacarpal bones of his index finger and middle finger, pinning his gun hand to the floor. Victor howled, a sound of pure agony that echoed off the metal walls. He tried to pull the letter opener out with his left hand, but Doris wrenched the AR-15 away from him, sliding it across the room, where it clattered into the far wall.
Then she grabbed her ID badge, the laminated card she wore on a lanyard around her neck, and wrapped the cord around Victor's throat from behind. Not to kill, to control. She pulled tight, cutting off blood flow to his brain, the cord digging into his carotid arteries. Enough pressure to make him compliant, not enough to kill him. Yet. "Where's the fifth man?" Her voice was ice in his ear. Victor gasped, his free hand clawing at the cord. What fifth man? She tightened the cord. His vision started to tunnel, his body going limp, oxygen deprivation shutting down his voluntary responses. He had maybe 10 seconds before he lost consciousness. "Across," he choked out. "Apartment, 3rd floor." Doris loosened the cord slightly. "Sniper?" Victor nodded, gasping for air. "If you don't check in, what happens? Every 10 minutes, if I don't, he starts shooting hostages through the windows." Doris's blood ran cold. She looked at her watch. 11:23 a.m. The last check-in would have been 11:20. She had 7 minutes. Victor's face was turning purple, the ID badge cord cutting deep into his throat. Blood ran from his pinned hand, pooling on the floor. His breathing came in desperate gasps. "Ivan," he choked out, each word costing him. "Across the street, apartment building, 3rd floor, sniper rifle." Doris kept the pressure steady. "Keep talking." Victor's lips were turning blue. He laughed, a terrible, wet sound with blood on his teeth. "If I don't check in, every 10 minutes, he starts shooting hostages through the windows." Doris's stomach dropped. She checked her watch, 11:23 a.m. If Victor's last check-in was at 11:20, she had 7 minutes, maybe less. She tightened the cord. Radio frequency. "Channel," gagged Victor. 7. Doris released him, letting him collapse forward onto his pinned hand. He screamed. She ignored it, reaching for the electrical cord from the maintenance panel on the wall. Heavy gauge wire, perfect for restraints. She zip-tied his good hand to his ankle, hog-tying him, then wrapped more cord around his legs. He wasn't going anywhere. She took his radio, switched it to channel 7. Static hissed. Then she heard it, breathing on the other end, steady, calm, professional. Doris keyed the mic. When she spoke, her voice was deeper, rougher, a perfect mimicry of Victor's Russian-accented English, a skill she'd learned 15 years ago when infiltrating rival families required speaking their language, matching their cadence. "Ivan, status." A pause, then, "All clear, awaiting extraction." "Change of plans," Doris continued in Victor's voice. "Police en route. Extract now. Rendezvous point Bravo." Static crackled. She could almost hear Ivan thinking, weighing the order. "Confirmed. Moving to Bravo." Doris released the mic button, her heart hammering. She'd bought time, 10 minutes, maybe 15, before Ivan realized Victor hadn't shown at the fake rendezvous and returned to his overwatch position. Not enough time, but it would have to be. Doris emerged from the vault corridor into chaos. The lobby looked like a war zone. Bullet holes pocked the marble walls. Shattered glass covered the floor. The decorative columns were chipped and scarred. Dmitri lay in the corridor entrance, unconscious, his face and chest blistered with chemical burns. Alexei was still down near the teller stations. Pavel was locked in the break room. The hostages had taken cover behind desks and counters, their faces pale with shock. Jake Morrison was conscious, one hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder, his face gray with pain. Shannon Davis held Emma tight, both of them shaking. Harold and Ruth Morrison clung to each other behind a desk. Melissa Rodriguez sat against the wall, her hands on her belly, tears streaming down her face. Richard Whitmore was sobbing in the corner, his face buried in his hands. Marcus Chen was at the teller station, trying to dial 911, his hands shaking so badly he kept hitting wrong numbers. The phones, they cut the phones.
Cell phone, Doris said, her voice sharp and commanding. Use your cell. Marcus stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. Who are you? Before Doris could answer, police sirens wailed outside. Neighbors had called after the gunfire. SWAT would arrive in minutes, but minutes weren't fast enough. Doris raised her voice, addressing all the hostages. Listen carefully. There's a sniper in the building across the street. If I don't take him out, he'll start shooting when police storm the building. I need to leave. Stay down, stay away from the windows. Don't move until police clear the building. You can't leave, Marcus started. Your security guard needs pressure on that wound, Doris pointed at Jake. Use torn shirts, direct pressure, keep him conscious. Ambulance is coming. She turned toward the back entrance. Wait, Marcus called after her. Who are you? Doris adjusted her taped glasses. They'd somehow survived the entire fight, held together with electrical tape and determination. When she spoke, the heavy Mexican accent was back, the shuffle returning to her posture. I'm the cleaning lady, senor. I just clean. She grabbed her gray uniform jacket from where it had fallen, grabbed a black trash bag from her cart, now actually full of trash from the morning's cleaning, and shuffled toward the back entrance. A SWAT officer intercepted her at the back door, his MP5 lowered but ready. Ma'am, you can't leave. This is an active scene. Por favor, Doris whimpered, her whole body shaking with controlled tremors. She held up the trash bag like a shield, her eyes wide with manufactured terror. I just clean. I just work. I don't want trouble. I need to go home. Please, no police. I just want to go home. The SWAT commander appeared behind the officer, assessing the situation with veteran eyes. He saw an elderly cleaning woman, terrified, holding garbage, trying to flee. Not a threat, not a witness worth delaying when there were armed suspects inside. Let her go, he ordered. We need to focus on the building, get her statement later. But sir, I said let her go. She's in shock. Focus on the hostiles. Doris shuffled past the police line, through the gathering crowd of emergency vehicles, across West Adams Street. The shuffle, the trembling, the broken English, all of it perfect, all of it invisible. The moment she entered the apartment building across the street, the act dropped. Doris didn't take the stairs, too exposed, too many sightlines. She knew these buildings, Chicago apartment blocks built in the 1960s, all the identical, all with the same layout, all with maintenance access through the basement. She found the utility room door locked with a standard pin and tumbler mechanism. She pulled a small tension wrench from her uniform pocket, she'd carried it every day for 5 years, old habits, and picked the lock in 12 seconds. The ventilation shaft was behind a maintenance panel, tight fit, 2 feet by 2 feet. 20 years ago, she wouldn't have made it. Now, at her current weight, smaller and leaner from 5 years of physical labor, she barely squeezed through. The shaft was claustrophobic, dark, filled with dust and the smell of old metal. Doris crawled, controlling her breathing. 4 counts in, hold 4, 4 counts out. Combat breathing. Keeps the heart rate down, keeps the mind clear. She emerged in the 3rd-floor hallway through a ceiling vent, dropping silently to the carpet. Apartment 3C was 10 feet away. The door was ajar. Ivan was confident, expecting extraction, not expecting threats. Fatal mistake. Doris could hear movement inside, the distinctive sound of a rifle being disassembled, metallic clicks, the whisper of a cleaning cloth. She reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a flathead screwdriver, 4 inches of hardened steel that she'd carried for maintenance work. She didn't knock, didn't announce herself. She entered low and fast. Ivan was at the window, his back to the door, breaking down a Remington 700 PSS. Professional equipment, suppressor, high-powered scope, armor-piercing rounds laid out on a cloth. He was good, trained, careful. Not careful enough. Doris covered the 12 feet in 3 seconds. She drove the screwdriver into his shoulder, just above the scapula, pinning him to the wall like an insect.
Ivan screamed, his hand reaching for the Makarov on the table beside him. Doris grabbed his hand, isolated 3 fingers, and broke them with a single strike. Downward pressure on the joints. Crack, crack, crack. He howled. She took the Makarov, removed the magazine, racked the slide to clear the chamber. The chambered round hit the floor. 8 seconds from entry to neutralization. She zip-tied his good hand to the radiator. She'd been carrying zip ties in her pockets all day. Old habits die hard. Gagged him with a dish towel from the kitchen and used his burner phone to dial 911. Active shooter detained. Apartment 3C, 147 West Adams Street. Send ambulance. 1 male, shoulder wound, 3 broken fingers, not life-threatening. She wiped the phone, dropped it, and left through the fire escape before the police could arrive. Doris returned to the bank through the back entrance. Most of the hostages were being led out the front by police and paramedics. The lobby was filled with SWAT teams, FBI agents, emergency medical personnel. But in the corner, near the vault corridor, Richard Whitmore sat alone. He was bleeding from a graze wound on his arm, caught a ricochet during chaos. His expensive shirt was torn and stained, and in his shaking hands he held Pavel's Glock, which he'd apparently picked up from where it had fallen. The barrel was pressed against his own temple. "Richard," Doris said softly. "Stay back." His voice was raw. "I'm a dead man anyway. The people Victor worked for, when they find out I failed, they'll kill me and my daughter." His face crumpled. "The treatment costs $400,000. The bank denied my loan. Maya has acute leukoblastic leukemia, stage 4. Without the experimental treatment, she has 6 months. I had no choice." "There's always a choice, Richard." "No." He swung the gun toward her, then back to his own head, his hand shaking violently.
Doris had 5 minutes before the full SWAT breach. 5 minutes to rewrite the story. She moved through the lobby like a ghost, repositioning bodies, planting evidence, erasing her existence from the narrative. Victor was still zip-tied in the safety deposit box room, unconscious from blood loss and pain. Dmitri was in the vault corridor, his chemical burns making him delirious. Alexei was out cold near the teller stations. Pavel was locked in the break room. She started with Pavel. She dragged his unconscious body from the break room, careful not to leave drag marks, and positioned him near Alexei, made it look like Pavel had attacked his partner, a double cross gone wrong. She took Victor's radio from her pocket and planted it on Dmitri, took Dmitri's radio and left it near Victor, evidence of internal betrayal, of a robbery falling apart from within. Richard's positioning was crucial. She moved him slightly, arranged his torn shirt to suggest he'd been grabbed, forced. The graze wound on his arm could be from crossfire during the gunmen's internal conflict. She wiped the Glock he'd been holding, left it near Pavel. During the chaos, anyone could have touched it. She used her cleaning cart, still somehow intact despite the bullets, to wipe down every surface she'd touched as La Víbora. The bucket that had struck Alexei, the spray bottles, the vault corridor walls, the safety deposit box room shelving. In 3 minutes, she erased the evidence of her combat skills, leaving only the story of criminals turning on each other. The hostages had seen everything, yes, but trauma fragments memory. 23 different perspectives, 23 different stories, filtered through fear and adrenaline and shock. The physical evidence would tell the tale the FBI wanted to believe: a robbery gone wrong, internal betrayal, hostages caught in the crossfire. Doris returned to her cart, adjusted her glasses, and slumped her shoulders. When SWAT breached the front entrance 30 seconds later, they found her huddled behind the teller counter with the other hostages, trembling and crying. Just another victim, just the cleaning lady. Invisible. The FBI took over the scene within an hour. Special Agent Sarah Reeves conducted the interviews in a mobile command center set up across the street. The hostages were separated, their statements recorded individually to prevent contamination. But the stories that emerged were fractured, contradictory, exactly as Doris had predicted. The cleaning lady fought them, Shannon Davis told Agent Reeves, her daughter Emma clinging to her side. She moved so fast, she knocked one of them out with a bucket. No, no, Harold Morrison interrupted from his gurney, an oxygen mask over his face. The gunmen fought each other. The young one tried to take all the money. I saw it. They started shooting at each other. She was just trying to hide, Melissa Rodriguez said, one hand on her belly, her voice shaking. The old woman, the cleaning lady, she was terrified. She hid behind her cart the whole time. Marcus Chen insisted, his eyes haunted. I don't know how, but she did something. She was different. She moved different. I don't remember, Sarah Mitchell sobbed. It happened so fast. There was shooting and screaming, and I don't remember. Thomas Chen sat in shocked silence, unable to provide any coherent statement. The physical evidence told a clearer story. Pavel's fingerprints on the weapons used to attack Alexei. Victor and Dimitri's radios switched, suggesting confusion and internal conflict. Bullet trajectories showing gunmen firing at each other. Chemical burns on Dimitri consistent with industrial cleaning supplies being used defensively by hostages. The unconscious gunmen themselves told a story of a robbery that had collapsed from within. Richard Whitmore's involvement remained murky. Some hostages remembered him opening the vault under duress. Others thought he'd been forced at gunpoint. Without hard evidence, without Victor or his crew providing testimony that contradicted the physical scene, the FBI focused on prosecuting the gunmen. Richard was questioned extensively, but he cooperated fully, providing detailed information about Victor's organization, their contacts, their operations. His daughter's illness was documented, his desperation understandable. The prosecutor would pursue conspiracy charges, but Richard's cooperation would matter. When it was Doris's turn for questioning, she shuffled into the mobile command center, her face streaked with tears, her hands shaking. I hide behind my cart. I pray to la Virgen. I hear shooting, so much shooting. Muy asustada, very scared. I think I die. Agent Reeves patted her shoulder gently. You're safe now, ma'am. We'll need you to come to the station tomorrow for a formal statement. Can you do that? Doris nodded meekly. Si, tomorrow. I come tomorrow. She never showed up. Within 2 days, the FBI realized they couldn't locate Doris Estrada. The address on her employment file was a small apartment in Pilsen, a vacant lot. Her social security number belonged to a woman who died in 1987. Her bank account, if she had one, was untraceable. Her references were disconnected numbers. She was a ghost. Probably undocumented, Agent Reeves told her supervisor. Fled to avoid deportation. Happens all the time. We'll issue a request for information, but honestly, she's not a priority. She's a victim, and the real perpetrators are in custody. They were half right. 1 week later, a brown envelope arrived at First National Bank addressed to Marcus Chen. Inside was a cashier's check for $400,000 made payable to Northwestern Memorial Hospital with a notation for Maya Whitmore Treatment Fund, patient number 847392. The accompanying note was handwritten in elegant flowing script. For Maya Whitmore's treatment, a gift from an anonymous donor, every child deserves a chance to grow up. Marcus stared at the check for a long moment, his hands trembling. Then he walked down to the holding cells where Richard was being kept pending trial. Richard had been cooperative, providing evidence against Victor's organization in exchange for reduced charges. He'd pled guilty to conspiracy, likely serve 3 to 5 years. His lawyers said he'd be eligible for early release with good behavior. Maya could visit him. He could watch her grow up even from prison. But the treatment, the experimental therapy that could save her life, cost $400,000, money Richard didn't have, money the bank had denied him. Until now. Richard, Marcus said quietly, sliding the check through the slot in the cell door, this came for you, for Maya. Richard looked at the check, then he looked at the note, then he broke down crying, great heaving sobs that shook his entire body. Who, he choked out, Who sent this? It's anonymous, I don't know. But Marcus did know, or at least he suspected. Somewhere in Chicago, a cleaning lady named Doris Estrada had withdrawn her emergency funds, $50,000 from 3 hidden locations around the city. She'd added it to the $350,000 she'd quietly taken from Victor's duffel bags during the chaos, when everyone's attention was on the gunmen and the hostages. Blood money, earned through violence and crime, cleaned and repurposed for a little girl who deserved to live. 3 days after the robbery, First National Bank reopened. The bullet holes had been patched, the shattered glass replaced, the blood cleaned from the marble floors. A new cleaning lady started the morning shift. She was younger, friendlier, actually engaged with the staff. Her name was Rosa, and she smiled at people when they walked by. Marcus Chen watched from his office window and felt a pang of something, guilt maybe, or regret. The old cleaning lady, Doris, or whoever she really was, had saved their lives, had saved 23 people through some combination of courage and skill and violence that he still didn't fully understand. And he'd never even known her full name, had never said thank you, had treated her like furniture for 5 years. He called down to HR. "Can you send me Doris Estrada's file, the woman who worked here before Rosa?" The HR director called back 20 minutes later. "Mr. Chen, we don't have a file for anyone named Doris Estrada. According to our records, we've never employed anyone by that name." "That's impossible. She worked here for 5 years." "I'm sorry, Mr. Chen, there's no record, no employment contract, no tax documents, no direct deposit information. It's like she never existed." Marcus hung up slowly. He stood at his office window looking down at West Adams Street, watching the morning crowds flow past. For just one moment, one brief, impossible moment, he thought he saw a familiar figure. Orthopedic shoes, hunched posture, salt and pepper hair in a severe mun. But when he blinked, she was gone. Just another invisible person in a city full of them. Somewhere in Chicago, in a studio apartment rented under the name Maria Gonzalez, the woman who had been Doris Estrada sat at a small kitchen table. She'd removed the reading glasses, washed the gray dye from her hair, revealing dark brown with threads of natural silver. Without the makeup that had aged her, without the hunched posture, she looked her actual age, 42, not 60. She looked at her hands in the afternoon light. These hands had scrubbed floors for 5 years, trying to wash away the blood of 23 confirmed kills. For 5 years, she'd believed she could be normal, could be just Doris, the invisible cleaning lady who harmed no one.